Okay, welcome back to the Franklin Planner podcast, actually our inaugural episode. So my name is George Wright III, and I'm joined by my co-host, John Harding. How you doing, John?
Doing great.
This has been a little bit of a time coming, right? Putting this podcast together with our schedules. It is very much. I was excited that you asked me to join you here on the podcast.
It's an awesome opportunity. You've done this a bunch, and we're trying to get the word out, right? We're trying to help people solve some big problems. Some big ideas and big problems. There's both stuff that's coming at people individually, but leaders and teams. And some of them are problems to get through and around, but also what's going on today. There are big opportunities for people.
You know that because, and maybe what we could do real quick, let's give them a little bit of our background. So I'm the host of the Daily Mastermind podcast on iTunes and Google Play, but I'm also the CEO of Evolution Group, and I've been building brands for 25 years, some of the biggest names out there. But you are one of the owners and a board member at FranklinPlanners, and you also you're a managing partner at Light Consulting. So you see what's going on. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do now. What's your background?
I'm spending my time as this board member. I'm on the executive team, some great owners of FranklinPlanner. And we wanted to give birth to this podcast just to help people and the community of people out there, to help people break through barriers, lead teams through what's going on today. So it's a good mix.
And that's what we have to do on this podcast, right? The idea is there are some timeless principles, there's some strategies and tactics, but we want to dig right into problems. So before we jump into kind of our format, I thought it would be helpful for those that have maybe not known the background or any of the history leading up to this. And so I wanted to dig into that for a minute. Over 15 million people over 40 years have been using, in fact, it's probably higher than that now, the Franklin Planner system for their productivity, their teams, for what matters most. Could you give us just a background of Franklin Planners, maybe just at least a high level of how it started and how we got to this point?
Happy to do it. And there's two people that we should mention. Hyrum Smith started the Franklin Institute, and he had a passion for Ben Franklin and what he had written about a number of things, but how to productively lead your life.
Yeah.
That company turned to, within a year, to Franklin Quest.
Got it.
And the Franklin Planner. Now, I've got here, just holding in my hand for listeners, but those on video, one of the many awesome versions of the Franklin Planner. And we would add also journal system.
Yeah, because it's both, right? It's a combination of things. But that's just a tool, right? They perfected these tools and trainings and things over the years.
Yeah, and that is a good way to look at it, but also to think of, when you think of your life and how to lead it, and also teams, think of, there's a mindset, there are a set of principles, there are strategies.
Okay.
And so the technology that has been breakthrough is actually putting that all together. It is paper-based. So I would mention Hyrum Smith, and he got this system going.
Okay.
Stephen Covey is a huge part of this, Dr. Stephen Covey. On August 15th of 1989, he launched The 7 Habits. He had been working with those 7 habits. And through that book, there's just some incredible principles and strategies and a success system.
One of the main reasons that we connected is I really believe that people need a combination of principles and strategies and tactics and also tools. So you're saying that between Covey and Hyrum Smith has merged those two things. You've got the principles, timeless principles of Benjamin Franklin and others, and the tool set of the planners and journaling, right?
Yeah, it really is. And the genius, you could say, because his principles are for hundreds of years have been there. But the genius to put them together in a simple, powerful system that helps you create your best life. And I think that's, in terms of the shareholders and even all our users, we wanted to get this podcast going to just see how we could help people create that best life.
Yeah. But you see those problems all the time now. I was going to say this didn't come because we wanted to put some great content out, which it will be, or just because we have great tools, which there are. You saw the problems, right? There's problems on both a personal and team level. Like, what are you seeing right now integrating and talking to people every day? That's the purpose of the podcast, right? To help people to solve these problems and challenges that they have.
No, absolutely. There's a personal side to it, creating your best life, leading your life.
Yeah.
And then there's very much an organizational team side to it. Think technology for a second and think of the incredible digital technology. There is both like amazing miracles that come forward.
But it also complicates your life too.
It's a huge set of distractions.
Yeah.
And you look at how the brain's working. And so in terms of leading your own life, setting your mission, vision, values, and goals, and then executing that day by day, there's that side where it's just been amazing. And then as you think about you're a team member, you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, how can you engage your team to do those same things? So there's a lot there to help.
I think that's really interesting. I wanted to unpack that for a minute because I think most of the challenges people face can go back to a couple of different things. Number one, they're not grounded in any kind of direction. Like you think about it, every day we're just moving in technology and everything's pushing you so fast. You're not intentional with your life. And then second, you don't really have anything but technology to center yourself around. And so the idea of having a journal, a planner system, things like this tied to your intention is big. So hopefully with this podcast, our goal is to give people the strategies, the tactics, the tools and systems, and we're going to dig into a whole bunch as well. But what is, and by the way, just for if this is your first time listening, it's our first episode, we are going to be covering these principles, but we're also going to dig into case studies, right? We're going to do interviews of top businesses. We're going to look at case study challenges. Do you feel like that's one of the best ways for us to dig in with people on problems individually?
No, absolutely. We're going to try and take you down a path too, that will be a mix of, you and I were talking about some numbers and you mentioned some of them. Over 40 million people.
40 million. Wow.
Read the 7 Habits. So that you could look at that as this amazing set of timeless principles of how to use, say, the FranklinPlanner system and apply it. Then there are over 15 million and counting more that have implemented this planner and journal system. And really the combination of those two and to share some of their experiences. So a lot of those people we have as part of our community, they'll share their experiences. There's also a bunch of other people, George, that have written books that people would recognize in the last few years. And they're really, if we research and cross-reference those, they really are validators of Dr. Covey's work, Hyrum Smith's work, and the work Franklin.
That's what I was going to ask you, because some of these principles, I think people hear, wow, they've been around for a while, and they are timeless, and they are success principles that last the test of time, and millions of people have implemented them. But are they as applicable today as they were in the past? And some would say more applicable, right? What would you say to that? Because right now it's so different. The economy, the marketplace, everything's different.
Case for this, okay? You probably don't need to make it. You think about it. Here's what doesn't change. Humans.
That's true.
They don't change. So technology changes. And why they're more applicable now is there's just an incredible amount of overload on the brain, decisions, information. And just the chaos we live in. Another thing that's happening, you have all this information. We didn't used to talk as much about this, but you have so much information and you don't know what to believe. So this helps you with that.
And I've learned I agree, because I think it used to be about information. Now it's about application of that information in of ever-changing economy, ever-changing marketplace. So I know we're going to dig in. We're going to dig in today. We want to give a foundation overview of the 7 habits and the mission, vision, roles, goals, things like that, and also the planner system. But I was going to ask you, do you feel like the average listener is going to learn from our podcast regardless of what system they use, what type of training they've had? At the end of the day, these principles, when we start to apply them, they're going to apply on a personal level and a business level, no matter where they're at. In other words, some people are crushing it. Some people are struggling. Some people are trying to get past an obstacle or a benchmark. It's going to really apply to everybody's situation.
For sure. And I think we have one goal, and it is just to help.
That's it.
Just to help. If you're aware, you might rediscover something, and then you might also discover something you thought about. What's amazing, I was doing some research the other day on what percentage of the earth sets goals. And by country, and some
they have that kind of info. Oh, wow.
2%, like 10%. So some fundamentals that remind us, probably those that tune in are high achievers and understand this. And if that's the case, there's something new. And also they're reminded of stuff they already know inside.
That's the key. That is the key, because you know it already, but it doesn't mean you're doing it.
Sure.
And sometimes it's because you don't know how to break out of those bad habits. You don't know how to get to that next point. And so we're trying to create a path where we can help them on their journey, right? We want to help them through this process.
And invite them to join. And we'll welcome their texts, their emails,
feedback,
them as guests. So somewhat of just counseling together.
Cool.
But I would say this, even though day-by-day habits are small things, the impact is giant.
Yeah.
I don't want to understate it or overstate it. I think for all of us, the thinking about what matters to you, thinking about who matters to you, and thinking about how precious time is, it's probably easy to make a case.
Yeah.
But it's never more important. So whatever system you're using, we're going to focus on the principles. We are, though, try and highlight.
Well, that's
some things that have worked.
Yeah, we're seeing it right now. We're seeing everything happen. And just so everyone's really clear, this is going to be a mix of some teaching, some training, some case studies, interviews. We're going to bring in some great thought leaders. We got some authors. But let's do this over the little bit of time we have. Let's overview the 7 habits so people have a little bit of a foundation. And then what we'll do is I want to talk through a little bit the strategic process of vision, mission, values, and then we'll get into the planner system. This will give everyone a great framework to be able to go with. So let's start with the 7 habits. And this is not over the next few episodes, we're going to break them down. This is meant to be a high level overview. But in the first habit, which is be proactive, right? That's the first habit. This is your personal vision, right? Can you elaborate on the first habit?
Yeah, for sure. Then let me just back up a bit. For the audio, I'm just flipping through this 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the 30-year edition. And Stephen R. Covey, I think a key thing before we run through these habits is to think of some of this language, how you see the world. In the very beginning, he sets up just a couple principles to how to view the habits.
Yeah.
And one of them, he uses the word paradigm, how you see.
Yeah.
Hyrum Smith used another term. He called it your belief window.
Yeah.
Just how you see the world. And he talked about one day he was headed into New York to do some work, and he was on the subway, and there was this dad there it was actually a Saturday.
Okay.
True story in the book. And this dad is just letting his kids run all over the place. And Dr. Covey's a dad of 9, so he knows about kids, and I know these kids, they're great kids, but these guys are being kids. And he said he was as patient as he could. Finally, he just tapped the gentleman on the shoulder and said, "Sir, kids are
running everywhere,
bothering people." And then the father just looked up like he was just coming out of somewhere else. And he said, "Oh, I know, I'm sorry. Their mother just passed away an hour ago."
Wow. You have no idea. Yeah, I got it.
The story tells what a shift in his paradigm. And then he just establishes how important that is.
I want to mention something with that because you make a really good point, and I'm glad you backed us up a minute, because one thing I've learned, having done 1,000 episodes of the Daily Mastermind, is that people more and more today are starting to realize that their thoughts and their beliefs and their philosophy in life is what determines the results. And so the reason we're going through the 7 habits first is because you have to understand, you have to have a basic vision of your personal life, and it's never too late to start creating that life you want to live, right? Mm-hmm. So it's good that we have this foundation, and I love that story because it puts perspective on what we're going to be talking about. So no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're trying to accomplish, that's the setup for why we want to build this foundation with the 7 habits, right?
So let's rock through this over.
So let's do it. First habit number 1.
Taking responsibility for life. There's a key principle of thinking about your circle of influence versus your circle of concern. And the concept is there are a certain amount of issues, things you truly have control over. Focus on those.
Okay.
And be proactive. Take responsibility for your life. And that's really habit 1.
Yeah, and we're going to break that down just so everybody knows. We're going to actually break each of these down in a short episode. Habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. And these are kind of your principles of personal leadership, right? So begin with the end in mind. What would you take away from that habit?
Thinking ahead. He gives an example of, let's say you're 80 years old and you're looking back. It used to be a funeral. Let's just say, though, you're still alive.
Yeah.
And what would you like to have become? What would you like to have accomplished related to who matters to you and what matters to you? So it's really the idea of the blueprint.
Yes.
Creating first in your mind. Some people say spiritually, others just say designing.
Yeah.
You want to go.
It's creating that compelling future, right? And our goal on this podcast is we want to help inspire people to create a clear, compelling vision of the future that you could then bring into your present day and be more productive.
Let's just tie these in. As we've planned this, as with you and our team is, hey, how can we help people create their best life? How can we help leaders lead in their team? So as you think already about the 2 habits and why they're so important to your mindset, you can do so much, the potential in you, be proactive, and then where do you want to go? And now as we go forward, think, okay, if I have that, now each day, how do I tie that together?
Which leads to part 3, right? In habit 3 is put the first things first, which, by the way, people are moving so fast in life that they don't, right? So put things first things first is their principles of personal management. That's your day-to-day, right?
There's some awesome work in this. And this is where you can get quite specific about, okay, if that's what I care about, I realize I have control over this. What can I do? You start to think about longer term goals. You think about the day. Is it possible to create the perfect day? What would be the perfect day for you, George?
Yeah, I have an idea of that because I do that kind of stuff. But I can tell you, I've asked that question multiple times and people go, I don't know. And the initial answer is to not have to go to work, to not have to do this, not to do that. But when you sit on that for a little bit, you begin to craft a vision of what you really want without limits, right? And you can create a real, true, compelling vision of the future because at the end of the day, people have unlimited potential. They just haven't tapped into it yet. Okay, so habit 4 is think win. So we'll come back to this. Okay.
When we cross over from habits 1, 2, and 3, those make up what Dr. Covey calls the private victory.
Okay.
And
those are personal.
From kind of feeling and also using language like you're dependent to being independent. You've taken responsibility. You've thought about the roles in your life. You've thought about where you want to go.
Okay.
You've thought about the people in your life that matter. So as you've got this, what we call the private victory, now you're heading towards interdependence where you now are in a healthy, strong, balanced place to actually help others and interact with others. Not that you're not already doing that.
No, I think that's huge.
Better. Win is that some idea there's not some limited supply. I either win or you win.
Yeah.
But truly, as we think about it, there are opportunities. There's enough for everybody.
I tell you,
work together.
I want to do 2 things. Number 1, I'm really glad you made that point. I want to make sure if they didn't notice or listen to that they really understand that there's these inner things you have to work on to create your life. And then as you begin to go into the outer world and interact with people, like think win. And I like to think of that. I've applied that in my life quite a bit over the years. I like to think of that as also abundant mentality and focused on solutions and finding things that so many people are focused on the problem and so many people are focused on them winning, but they don't realize that win philosophy is actually an abundant mindset, which helps you to move to the next level. So that's a big one. I really like that habit itself. And we're going to break that one down because these sound very simple on the surface, but they definitely break down into a much deeper level. But I like that interpersonal. And remember, these are individuals and also teams, right? So this is how you think with your team, not just you with other individuals. And when you're leading a team, you have to think that way.
Right. I got to slip this in. I know we're going to unpack these in episodes to come, but you think about, we're experts in what's happening with organizations in terms of productivity.
Yeah.
And in almost every single case, the amount of people, the percentage of people in organizations, whether it's small or big, that are aware of the vision, mission, values of the people that are in the organization and decided is decreasing. So that's just awareness of what do we do here?
Yeah.
And then also how much people care if they are aware.
Yeah.
And then of those who care that are aware, a much smaller percentage there. Those who see how their job actually
makes a difference. Yeah.
So if I did care, but I didn't see how it connected, one survey by Gallup, and there's several, it shows that 13% of employees fit that. So that, what does that leave? 87%.
Yeah.
There's another one that by Gallup, then one by McKinsey, that also shows, hey, only 40% are aware. But again, those that are engaged. So that's focused on what you could say, what is the end in mind and how do I fit? But there's another whole set of issues and challenges leaders of organizations are having in terms of just how overwhelmed people are with technology and all that. As you think about
these are going to apply to businesses as well as individuals because of the team aspect.
There's like some huge obstacles, but some giant opportunities coexist.
Yeah. I think that's what digging into this with the podcast is designed to do, is to identify those problems, create the opportunities, identify the opportunities, and go to the next level.
We're going to be working on both.
Yeah, and that actually was a great segue.
Team or as a leader.
And we have to, right? So no matter whether you're listening for this reason, and we want your engagement, because obviously if you'll let us know what you're working on, we can come after that. But this is a great segue into when you were talking about understanding how a team interacts and things, into habit 5, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. If you're leading a team and you're trying to apply these principles of win, and then habit 5 comes in that says seek first to understand, then to be understood. Tell me what your high-level thoughts are on that habit.
Think about this. To the body, oxygen is everything. Think of the last time you were underwater.
Yeah,
was for a few seconds. It's a very focused thing. Being understood is like oxygen is to the body, but being understood to the soul. So the ability to
for a leader,
really actively listen,
okay,
understand, and then also to be able to be reciprocal to understand each other. So this is just giant in terms of also building trust, working together. It's such a powerful habit.
And if you want to create leadership,
then how to remember it and takes work.
It's the daily reminders, right? Because I think that's the problem that a lot of people have. They know some of these principles, but they don't apply them. And at the end of the day, we're so busy trying to communicate what we want that we're not first trying to understand what others want. And actually, I've learned over my career, it's much easier to create win-wins when you understand what everyone else is thinking and what is important to them and what's critical. Okay, so we're habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit 6 is synergize. This is creative cooperation. So synergize. Talk to me about that.
Synergize is that there's not a zero-sum game. There's a third alternative. Is that you're my way, your way. This is something that will impact further, but it's just an ability to synergize and find something better than what we're working on. And if you have high trust, if you're listening to each other, if you're also clear about where you're trying to go, I think this one, for me, really taps into a couple of fundamental premises. I'm just going to put them out here that I think we have in this podcast. And that is inside everyone is really genius, brilliance.
Yeah.
And I would use the word maybe even greatness. And also inside us is a leader, ability to lead your own life.
Yep.
And the ability to contribute. So,
or influence others. Yep.
Yeah. So as we come together in the public victory habits 4, 5, and 6, where we have the opportunity to just really unlock our potential and do more. So you're working together, you're understanding, you're trying to draw out the best, you're synergizing for something much better. Sometimes you hear, hey, 1 + 1 = 5, or something, but it's that idea that
well, you said it.
We can work together.
Yeah. You said it earlier, these principles sometimes come back around from other authors that really validate it. And a real big buzzword I'm hearing a lot right now in business is collaboration, right? So people are looking for ways to collaborate, but I've found that you're more successful collaborating when you seek first to understand, when you begin with the end in mind, when you have your personal mission and values in place. Okay, so we're short on time, but we want to keep going here. So habit 7, which we'll unpack a lot in this podcast, is sharpen the saw, which is really ties really well with one of my core beliefs, which is daily rituals in all areas of your life. So let's hit that one, and then we'll move on to our next segment.
Yeah, this is just the ability to have balance, to be healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically.
When you say balance, that's a tough word sometimes because people are like, I'm never going to have balance. What do you mean by that?
take time for yourself, the things that matter. I think a practical example would be your health.
Yeah.
And then the health is linked to, you don't take the gas in your car.
They're all linked, though. If you let one really fall by the wayside, you're going to suffer in those other areas. So that's the balance you're talking about.
And it really is the one that, if you looked at this as a tree, you might see habits 1, 2, and 3 as the roots. And then you might see the trunk of that tree and those branches going up as 4, 5, and 6. And then almost 7 is the water, the sun.
Got it.
That
brings it all together.
Tree grow and stay healthy.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so those are the 7 habits, and we're going to break those down in the upcoming episodes. But there's 2 other things I want to cover. One is this real strategic pathway of vision and mission and values. And then I want to lead right into the FranklinPlanner system and journaling system. So can you just give us a little bit of a basis as to why it's important for people to spend time with their vision, mission, and values?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is why we're here, because in some ways you think, okay, the FranklinPlanner podcast, and millions of people know the planner. George, I got to mention, there's a bunch of people, depending on your age, that haven't discovered the FranklinPlanner. And you think, what's a planner? You might think of paper. The technology actually is paper. And we'll show some unbelievable research about
it's intentional,
how the brain works.
Yep.
And writing and what we've lost by just screens and digital. But the principles of personal effectiveness, the principles of personal leadership and team leadership come together. There's a mindset. So we've talked about these unbelievably powerful principles.
Yeah, like timeless principles.
Hyrum Smith and Stephen R. Covey. And we're talking about them in the context of really a personal leadership system that comes together, how you can execute daily.
Yep.
And achieve these things. And you might look at it as a tool, but within that FranklinPlanner are all the principles and how to execute.
And how to apply them, right? Got it.
It's either.
Otherwise, you're just time management.
If it was an app, if it was software.
Correct.
It's just an app or software. But the power of the paper and that system of drawing out of the human are huge. So that's the FranklinPlanner system.
And it involves, so from my experience, and we'll break this down later, but it's a weekly and a daily process of applying principles that are the most important in your life. What matters most, who matters most, what you're trying to accomplish. And it keeps you grounded to those important things, but layers on it time management and quadrants and the ability to be more personally productive.
It really does. So think about the habits that we've just gone through, how to execute those through the FranklinPlanner system. There are 2 other models I'll just mention that are just core part of your daily life of succeeding, I would say, using a powerful productivity system. One is the productivity pyramid, and it's a way to also lay right against the 7 habits to show how they are the, just powerful mindset. But this pyramid is anchored by your values.
Okay.
So think of that wider end of the pyramid. And within there, think of your vision, your mission, and your values. What matters to you?
That's your foundation, basically.
Your constitution. And so that's a step 1. Now, we've talked about the 7 habits, and this is inherent within them. But as you think about, how do I execute on that? So you take some time. It is a lot of time.
Yeah.
But first step.
But once you do that heavy lifting, your whole life, and most people are not willing to do that, but when you can get those mission and values and that strategic blueprint, then you can move to productivity. Most people go the other way around and they just never get to what's important. So that's the baseline. And then what's next?
So that's the baseline. I'll give you an invitation at the end of today's related to that. So next would be your goals.
Okay.
And then next, take a look at what you do each week. And at the top of the pyramid is your daily actions.
Okay.
So this comes together in a really time-tested formula where you begin with what matters and then you execute by looking out over the week and then the day specific to your priorities, which again are not only who matters, but what matters, and executing that.
And if somebody wants to go create the life they want, it's like a recipe that's been proven over time. And like you said, with the number of people that goal set, very few people do it. But the majority of high achievers and successful people have done it. And if you miss a piece of that blueprint, if you don't have any strategy, mission, vision, values, and you're just doing productivity, you're going to get a certain result that will last. And if you're doing it the other way around and you're not actually applying it on day to day, you're not going to see the results either. So it really is a process and a blueprint for putting it together, which is why the planner system and the training and education is so important, I think.
Just to validate that point, here's Ed Batiste, Stanford professor, does a bunch of work on journaling, goals, and he has a stat that if you write down physically once your goal and you never even revisit it, that you're over 32% more likely to achieve it. Now, just think about that. You only wrote it down once.
You're still in the small percentage that actually do it, though, right?
Now, imagine doing it.
Yeah.
That's a key part of this. And they're just proven practices and processes that go with the Franklin Planner system. So
I love it.
It is a key part of the success system. It really is, again.
But we're going to culminate to where people can realize that, listen, with 20 minutes weekly of real strategic, back to the basics, intentionality with your life, your productivity and your results and your ultimate destination is going to be so much more attainable. And so as we've now built this foundation with habits and timeless principles, we have this planner system and things, we're going to integrate that into what we're doing moving forward, because our goal, the goal of this podcast, you can tell the listeners what you think. The idea is for them to have more success, but also life doesn't have to be so difficult. And when you're intentional, the path, navigating this path is not so hard, but you have to be intentional, right?
That's right.
So what would you hope that people get really out of these episodes that we're going to be doing? What's the real goal out of it?
I hope that there's something that they end up learning.
Hating?
Then I also believe that there's something that will change in how they feel, and then that they will take action. Now, we're going to try and see how we can help, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to mix this with issues that are going on today, people that have done a lot of different things. But what I'm hoping is that they will find out an easier way and a powerful way and a more simple way to lead their life and to create it. I am hoping that they will be on fire, because when you think about, we're not going to be telling anybody what to do.
Yeah.
So I believe, George, we're trying to share information in a system that helps them really engage with what they care about.
Yeah.
And is super flexible, but also principle-based. And then I hope that they'll just do something that helps those around them and them.
To make impact too.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a big thing that I'm hoping will happen.
Yeah.
With Lynn's stuff.
And I think ultimately at the end of the day, this episode was really to lay that foundation, but we're excited about bringing really cool, current market, cutting edge strategies, tactics, examples, case studies, interacting with some of our listeners, some of the businesses that we're connected with. And so at the end of the day, the interviews, the case studies and everything we're going to be doing being great. But over the next several episodes, we're going to break down each of the habits, because I think this is good to have that foundation. And then you're going to find that once a week, we're going to be coming in, we're going to be bringing in some great thought leaders. We're going to be bringing in some great case studies. And we want the listeners to engage, because if they'll engage with us and let us know what they're working on, what they're struggling with, then, and we invite them to really engage with us so that we can help craft this. We have access to a lot of resources, a lot of knowledge, a lot of tools, a lot of people that they might not have access to. And that's why I love this principle of the mastermind. And so we want to work together on that. So what, as we finish up here, what would be a core takeaway, or is there anything we'd like to leave our listeners with on this episode?
Yeah, I think it's an invitation on my part.
Let's do it.
If you've heard of the Franklin Planner, if you've used it, you might be like, there hasn't been one person I've run into over the 30 plus years I've hung out with Franklin Covey that hasn't said to me, and for those just listening, I'm holding out one of the many versions of a Franklin Planner, small, easy to use, and then there's just different ones. And every time they say, I love that. I love that. And in many cases, they say, I wish I was still using that, just because of the way trends have gone and digital technology caught everyone's attention.
Yeah.
But what I hope is that there's a big breakthrough. And I'd just like to give the invitation that over the next 30 days, I'd invite everyone to think about, have you written down something, you might call it something different, your personal mission or vision? Have you written down lately and thought carefully about who matters most to you and what matters most to you? And just invite you to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then the pathway we go down, we'll just be trying to share mindset, strategies, tools to help with that.
Yeah, I like that. And what I'll do is in the show notes, I'm going to put some links to some great reference resources, a PDF and a worksheet, as well as links to things that they can use in order to craft that if they don't have any type of a mission or values or anything put together. So I'll put links in that. And if you're listening to this, do me a favor and subscribe. Don't miss any episodes. We're going to be going through a whole bunch of different details, and we'll put some contact info in there as well. We want to hear from you. So anyway, that's it for today. I hope that you have learned something. I hope you'll apply something. I hope you'll join us again in the future, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.